Thank you for coming, everybody. This is BJ Preiser. She's the master gardener that is going to be explaining to us about all the different plants and how they balances out the nature and the soil and attracts different varieties of, the animal species that used to live here before. We destroyed everything. So, BJ Preiser. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Certainly. It's a gorgeous day, so I can understand if, everyone seemed to be out on the Brookhaven Trail when I came up the road, so I don't blame them.
I was out there.
Yes. I ran my 3.5 miles this morning beforehand, so I feel good that way too, so I was out with them a little bit. So yeah, I am a master gardener from Montgomery County. On Route 113 is where our office is, the Penn State Extension office. It is where we just finished yesterday, had a big plant sale. I'll give you an advertisement first. And there's actually going to be still a half price plant sale, as I was mentioning to one lady, of leftover plants, because we had thousands, and now we still have hundreds of all great plants, and from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Monday through Wednesday at the Penn State Extension office in the back, first barn as you drive in the back. So if you still would like to look for any nice perennials, annuals, veg, there are some water plants and whatnot. There are still some great choices and half price. Anyway, Penn State Extension office is there. Master Gardener, I'll just tell you who and what we are. Master Gardeners are avid gardeners with great interest in gardening, who after a little, to be a master gardener, you apply to be in the program. If you're chosen, I applied, had an interview, and there were 25 of us chosen out of a little over 100 people that applied this time around to go through the program. I was fortunate enough to be chosen. It was last year. Penn State then gives us a half-year worth of training. They have a different professor coming every day, or every week, I should say, and giving us a quickie course on botany, all things horticultural, landscaping, bugs, entomology, a whole class on the biology of insects, just about anything, turf, annuals, perennials. So you get a quick course on everything so that you are well versed in many subjects. Then you can sort of hone in on what you find most interesting. I've been honing in a little bit on native plants. I have extensive water gardening plantings in my yard, so everything's of interest to me. So I know a little about a lot of things, sort of jack of all trades. We'll answer questions. If anyone has questions as we're going along, just shout it out. We're pretty informal here. So anyway, we're going to be talking about native plants and wildlife, and keep slanting it back towards birds, because that's where you're coming from. Alrighty. So some of the main points we want to talk about: native plants. What are they? Why are they important? How can we lure them into our landscape? And what are they and where can I purchase them, basically? Native plants are plants that were found in the United States prior to European contact, okay? On the reverse side of that, then, non-native plants, which we sometimes call alien plants, are plants that came after European contact. So in the 1700s and 1800s, and all the first Europeans were coming to the United States, it was a big wave of non-native plants coming in, because people brought over what they knew. So they brought plants from England and Germany and later on in Spain. So that was some of the bigger waves of when non-native plants or aliens started coming in. In the 20th century, it became very cool and hip to have Asian exotics. And so that was in the 20th century. So we've had all these waves of plant introductions. Not bad, but it's just the way it is. Basically, I'm talking about natives in southeastern Pennsylvania, in the Piedmont region, as we call it here, the 13 counties, basically from Harrisburg over to to southeastern Pennsylvania here, is what we're basically talking about today, because every region has its own native plants, but I'm not talking about the native plants in Arizona and whatnot, because they would have their own species and types of plants. So, the wild thing now is that 1/3 of all plants in Pennsylvania are non-native plants and growing, because we find that the non-native plants, or the alien plants as we call them, often they are so darn happy here in Pennsylvania, they are taking over and killing off the native plants. And that is a bad thing as far as we're concerned, because when you eliminate your native plants, you are eliminating the food and the habitat that our native insects, birds, pollinators, caterpillars are used to. So it's not a good thing. And I'll be going over, have the nice little pamphlets here on what's invasive and what's non-native. And until I really start getting into this, you don't even think about what maybe is a native plant. And a lot of native plants we're really familiar with, but they are disappearing. And when native plants disappear, native birds and insects disappear. And they have been disappearing. So it's sort of sad and scary in that way. The value of native plants, why is it important? It's important for our wildlife. Birds and insects are used to the native plants of this region. Their biology, their enzymes in their tummies are used to the native plants. Most, especially the insects, are plant-specific. Caterpillars, butterflies are plant-specific. If their host plant is not available, then they go somewhere else or die, basically. And that goes up the food chain. If the insects, caterpillars that birds are looking for aren't there, then they're going to be going somewhere else, or they're going to be dying and they won't have food to feed their babies, their fledglings. Also, native plants are very important because they're adapted to our region. That's really important because then they need less fertilizer, they need less water once established. When you put any plant in, you need to water it. It doesn't like being yanked up by, and placed somewhere else. But once you've established it, native plants are perfectly happy. They are used to the climate, the type of soil we have, and so they need less pesticides, water, fertilizer. So it's a no-brainer. It makes gardening easier for us, makes wildlife happier. So it's a win-win situation. Native plants help create a biodiversity that is the whole circle of life for our insects, our bees, our pollinators, our birds. Many nurseries, now it's finally getting to be cool to have native plants. Many nurseries sell native plants. There are a few around here that specifically sell native plants. It's a little bit of a niche, but many nurseries sell plants. And when we look over the list, you'll see that there's a lot of things that you recognize that it's not like, woo, all expensive and different. It's just a mindset that if you have a choice, it's better to buy native plants, and native plants specifically for the type of birds or insects or butterflies that you are trying to draw into your space. We try to encourage people not to go out into the woods, along the Perky Trail or whatever, and dig up native plants, because they're having a hard enough time surviving, not being invaded over by crown vetch and honeysuckle and poison ivy and all the other things that are kudzu and all the other things, mile-a-minute weed, that are covering over and smothering and killing them. So you don't want to go out and dig. Anyway, it's like 50-50 if you do go out and dig up a jack in the pulpit, you're probably going to kill it before you get it planted in well and baby it. So don't do it. It's best. On the flip side of talking about the nasty native plants, it's also us as humans. We've been, for our own use, of course, destroying the native, all the native land here. We macadam over, we put pesticides all over the place, we're spraying a little too much, building properties, parking lots everywhere that are impervious to rainwater and causing great rainwater runoff. But we're really disturbing the dirt a lot, which is destroying native plants, and things like poison ivy are just so happy with disturbed soils. It allows them to creep in all the faster. And actually, poison ivy is native, so not all natives are, you know, absolutely wonderful in that way, but it is native. Woo! I saw in my statistics that only 1% of Pennsylvania is, at this point, is considered wild, like totally never messed up by human, you know, footprints. And only 3 to 5% of the United States and the lower 48 states here remain undisturbed habitat for plants and animals. So that's sort of wild that, you know, like 95% of all the United States and lower 48 have been maneuvered in some way for our own use, and that's what's doing in our native plants, our native bugs, butterflies, pollinators, all those happy things, birds. So, first advertisement today, like, regardless of the size of your property, think native plants. Plug them in. I'm not telling anyone to go out and you know, get rid of all your happy exotics, because I'm not. You know, I have wonderful hostas, I have, you know, wonderful plants like that, which I love and I'm going to keep, but I'm continuous when I have choices to put in. I'm thinking more native plants in new spots, native trees and shrubs, which we'll get into a little bit with who they are and every plant that you know. But it's just a mindset just to make better choices. I'm a newer master gardener, as I mentioned, and actually I thought I was doing pretty darn well as far as, you know, I was deluded thinking I had many more native plants than I do. I have quite a few, but not as many as I thought. A little bit ago, my husband and I had our property certified, you know, as a wildlife refuge, because I had seen that in another garden. I thought that looks really cool. So you get the little sign, because you send off and you prove to them that you have, you know, food, water, shelter, you don't use pesticides and whatnot for your property. And so we thought we were doing pretty darn well. And I have an extensive bird feeding system, because I really like birds also. But I didn't make the connection that you need native plants also, so that you maintain your butterflies, you maintain your birds, your birds, bird food in the winter when I feed all year round, but you need your insects for the birds to be, you know, feeding. You need your caterpillars that are often plant specific. So, you know, it sort of knocked me down a peg. Then I thought, well, oh boy, I'm doing so well. Well, okay, but not, you know, we can all do better. So it's just an education type thing. So as I said, native plants help create just that great circle of life, because you don't want to, if we had a discussion before the talk started, if you can go the least potent way, if you're using insecticides, just be cautious, because you really don't want to poison your grass, your land, you know, have a tolerance for some bugs and caterpillars, because a lot of them are really good, and, you know, whether you have bats or birds, they really need bugs, caterpillars, birds, different parts of the year. That's mainly what they are eating. And then in winter, often they're eating more from our feeders, of course, but the nuts and the berries from great shrubs and trees. So you need a little bit of everything. If you're really into it, I've heard this man lecture, Dr. Douglas Tolomai. He is a professor at the University of Delaware who is an entomologist, a bug man, a specialist in bug man. He knows everything about bugs. He has wonderful slides on every kind of bug known to man and birds. Lives down in Oxford, down, you know, southeastern Pennsylvania, the pocket there. Excellent book. It's a little depressing, the first half, a little depressing, because he's talking about the destruction of our wildlife, and, you know, then he's able to say, you know, if we do more natives, if we really think what we're doing, there's a chance to turn it around so that we won't be killing off every single native plant, bird around. So it's a really interesting book. He's devoted a life to doing research on what bugs birds eat, what bugs help with the plants, the whole cycle of life. He has found that, or he's done some studies also on what plants are most usable to insects, because he's the one who really knows that insects are biologically programmed to eat certain plants, that they can't digest other plants. There are a lot of insects that sort of, are generalists, but many, many more are specialists that they only eat specific plants. And insects, it goes back to, are paramount and so important for the bird life. One of his studies was to see how long a period of time would it take for insects to change their biology to eat non-native plants. And so he and his little researchers were looking at plants that have been in the United States, non-native plants, for over 100 years, over 200 years. And no, the nature of insects, it doesn't happen that fast. It probably happens over thousands of years. But they are specialists, and if they can't eat the bugs that they are looking for, the birds don't get the bugs and the caterpillars and whatnot. So it's really interesting. He has fascinating pictures and information on bugs, birds, and whatnot. So he's a really interesting guy. Another book that I found, Native Plants of the Northeast. Wonderful. It's nice to be able to identify great pictures, because that's the thing. You go out and say, what is that? And sometimes just a description doesn't do it for you. They have nice descriptions, but they have great pictures too, so that you can see what the plant is, what its attributes are, what it might attract, or if you're walking along the Turkey Trail or whatever, there's great pictures. So there's some really good things. And on the internet, you can often Google and find flowers of Pennsylvania or whatever, and it's amazing what you can find there if you want to take the time and just play around with that. So, as I reiterate, once again, it's great to consider if you're planting a new flower bed. It's nice to be able to do a massing of native plants. Birds like hummingbirds, they go by color. And so if you have your reds, your purples, your oranges, and have a massing of it, then the hummingbirds can come and really see it well. They don't go by smell. They're going by color. Or you can make an island of native plants and shrubs, so it'll be great for insects, birds, shelter, perching for them to go to feeders and whatnot. But it's just nice to be able to think natives as opposed to doing a Japanese whatever, All right, this pamphlet, I love. When you first open it up, it sort of reiterates native plants, who are they, why are they important, and good summary and even maybe more in depth than what I mentioned. But I love the inside, because it's something you could put in your purse when you're going to the nursery, to the plant store or whatever. Or if you're going to, I go to Lowe's, I go to big box stores and Home Depot and whatnot. They can have some of those too. Just that those workers aren't going to be as native. They're not going to be knowledgeable about natives. They know what to sell and they know the price, but they're not plant experts. Some of the smaller nurseries are plant experts. But you can see the first part of the descriptions here are for showy flowers. And I love this because it gives you the bloom time, the color. Because if you're planting it and you want to do all oranges or all reds, whatever, you can do color coordinator, you can do mix and match, you can do casual. It's telling you the preference on shade or sun. And you have to know that when they're talking sun, they're talking about 6 hours or more of sunlight is what sun is. If you're talking shade, or well, say medium, that's 3 hours to 6 hours of sunlight in a particular area. Because you want to remember, when you're going to plant a plant, think about the conditions. Is it wet or is it dry? Is it in vacant sun for 6 or 8 hours? Or is it like half the day or none? Is it totally under the trees and it gets dabbled sunlight part of the day, and you're sort of lucky to get 3 hours of decent sun? Consider, is it a dry, shady place or a wet, shady place? This is going to give you an idea of what that plant, how that plant will flourish. We can plug a lot of plants in places, and maybe they'll limp along for a couple of years and then die a miserable death if we don't think about where the location of the plant is. And I mean, I've done it. I've forced plants, I've tried to force plants into being where they don't want to be, and they limp along, usually will die sooner or later. But it's a great, now it has a common name and then the scientific name. The reason we have scientific names is one nursery will call a plant something, and another nursery might call it something else. But if you go by the scientific name, and really cool master gardeners, which I'm not one yet, when I talk to some of the oldsters, they always talk everything in all the Latin names, and that's really cool, and I hope to be there someday when I'm old and cranky. But I know a few Latin names, not so many, but I can read them. So it's really cool. So that's why it helps you zero in. If you're really looking for a native and you think you're looking at it, sometimes the common names can throw you off. But you can see things like phlox. They've been blooming along the side of the road now, and a lot of them have there's the spring phlox and the fall phlox, and most of them are native. Cardinal flower, which is a lovely flower for hummingbirds. It has just great red flowers. It likes slightly moist, and it is just a fabulous, and if you saw it, you would recognize it. Columbine. There's just a lot of things. Bee balm, probably a lot of people might recognize it when they see it. So there's a lot of really cool plants that, like I said, it's not woo-woo, never heard of these things before. And like Black-eyed Susan, Rebecca. There's quite a few of the cone flower, Black-eyed Susan type things. And these are natives. Once you plunk them in there, establish a water, it's happy, it will spread. It's great for finch, they love the seeds. It will stay upright for a while till you really get sick of it in the winter, and then hack it down. So it has, fall into winter interest, the little head seed pods, and I have them up and down one side of my driveway, and every time we go up the driveway in late summer, early fall, a host, dozens, of finch all go whoop, and it's just so cool. So it's a neat thing for seed production. And there's a lot of plants like that is just really wonderful. In the midsection, it has a handful of native grasses to put in that will look nice and have height for your garden. And a bit of ferns. This is just a small smattering. There's more ferns, and it looks like this will give you names of all the ferns and all the that are native in this area. Oh, and I just wanted to mention, for anyone who doesn't know, we are in Zone 6B. The column right over the top here says zone preference. Most of Pennsylvania is all Pennsylvania is either Zone 5 or Zone 6. So you want to look for things that are Zone 6, okay? The numbering zones, all that means is way up north, say Canada, would be Zone 2. The whole way down to Miami is Zone 10. So whether you're looking for plants in lower Florida, Zone 10, mid-Florida to Georgia, Zone 9, coming up to the Carolinas, the lower Carolinas, Georgia is 8, North Carolina is 7, we're up to 6, and then you get into higher points in northern Pennsylvania, and then up to, it gets cooler and cooler. So if a plant like the ostrich fern, this is kind of in Zone 2 through Zone 6. So we're at the bottom of it. It's a really hardy plant. It's happy way north of us, and And, you know, it doesn't want to be in the deep south because it would just be really unhappy. It's way too hot down there. So that's when you're looking at it. That's just another thing when you're looking at plants, because they will sell plants that are in zone 7 or below. And you just have to know that it's a tender perennial. You have to bring it in or consider it an annual and let it die, you know. So anyway, that's some of the cool information that this little pamphlet is giving us. Woody plants, or as we know them, trees, and then shrubs and small trees. So it's giving you a really cool, and then of course the note side over on the far side here, left side, is telling you what its attributes are. If birds or hummingbirds or has really cool seeds or really great winter interest or berries or whatever. So this is just a cool handy dandy guide, as is this little sheet that I had done as a supplement. Now there's a lot of things that are on one or the other, but I just thought it was just a nice addition to, this is all flowers, but showing really nice things that are showy, wonderful. They're not, you know, any more expensive than anything else, and it's just wonderful plants to consider as options in your garden. So that's great stuff there. Then, say on the negative side, or not the negative, well, yeah, on the negative side, I mentioned invasives, and so that's what these little lists are. And these are plants that, some of them that you're going to know and recognize. As I was mentioning to someone, they're not always the worst thing in the entire world, but they are plants that are really growing at a really rapid speed and are taking over our native plants. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know whether they're native. I assume they are. I looked up today to see the poison ivy was. I'm like, darn, I can't say something nasty about poison ivy not being a native. But is it a native? Good question. It certainly does grow, and I don't think I remember seeing it on any of these lists. I remember hearing that they came from England. I think, but I'm not 100% sure. You know, it's a good question, and I can certainly find out, but probably my one piece of information said that some of the most noxious, disgusting plants in America are by far invasives, or non-native. So, but the birds like it. So, good question. It probably we'll blame it on that until we know better. Now, on my property, I'll tell you, we can mention invasives here and for a little bit, and there are some things we really will recognize. I have a plant that I was shocked, actually I learned last year, it's something called Lesser Celandine. It's up in the upper block area in the gold, which I for years have loved. I'm in a very wet property. I have streams, I have ponds and whatnot. And in the spring, it makes my property a carpet of gold. It's just really pretty, but it really does spread, and it's everywhere, and then it turns to mush, it disappears. By this time of year, it has really turned to nothingness. But now that I know that it's an invasive, I used to transplant it. I mean, I used to, like if I moved in, I'm like, oh, I love this gold. And I still do like it, but I don't worry about transplanting it, it is something that I guess it's just a rapid grower. And when it does start failing, and when it starts, wilting, it does cover over everything. So if you have daffodils coming up, if you have, it just makes them, it covers them with a leaf slime, basically. And I uncover all the leaf slime, and now I throw my, the Lesser Celandine in the, in my recycle bin. So there are things that I thought was really wonderful and cool and native, and now I realize that it's a non-native, it's an invasive, and it's on this list of terrible things. So I was still not worried about it totally, but I certainly am not going to baby it anymore. But they even have things that, of course, Norway maple is something that just escaped from, came from Europe, and is just taking over woods and whatnot. Kudzu, mile-a-minute weed are things I think we all can agree are just really awful. If you go along the Perky Trail, down towards the dog park, towards Phoenixville, there is so much mile-a-minute weed and kudzu, it just makes huge blankets over every plant tree and kills everything that it covers. Or if you take the train down to Philly, you'll just see that there are just plants, and so that could be honeysuckle, it could be mile-a-minute, it could be kudzu that just covers over everything. And you really see kudzu when you're going down south too. So there are so many plants that in that way, it's important to know, you know, what's invasive. Purple loosestrife, like the Perkiomen Water Conservancy folk, have days where they go out and they pull that out of the Perkiomen stream because it's taking over all our native plants and killing it off. So there are a lot of things that we've just, you know, looked and said like, well, isn't that nice? Well, not necessarily. It's killing off our natives, and that's the thing. They are just really pretty aggressive. So the two different lists, and some have some overlapping things, but I just thought that was interesting just to, and I must say, some nurseries still sell some of these things, because not many years ago, I was at a wonderful garden down south, and I saw they had something on this one, on the single sheet, something called porcelain berry, and it was gorgeous. I had it in an arbor, and so I sought it out in a nursery up here, and I planted it, and now I see it's invasive, and I can understand, because it grew over top of everything, and it has really pretty pastel berries, but apparently birds and insects don't like it, and it just grows over everything. So there are nurseries do sell things that grow well and insects don't like because it's not native to our area, and that's a wild thing that nurseries and some landscapers sell plants that they'll say, you know, it's resistant to insects and bugs. It's because no insect or bug wants it. And so it doesn't have holes in their leaves, it's all fine and happy, but you know, you're not doing anybody any good. So just because a nurseryman will want to put it in because he can often get it cheap and it will grow fast and make his client happy, but it serves no purpose in our landscape and it's invasive and, you know, so it's just really interesting. I just found it all very eye-opening. So I'm learning all the time, and that's a good thing too. The next little list of really cool things. This goes over a little bit of trees. Oh, you have contact? Sure. All right. These are really great trees to consider, and they're basically small to medium-sized trees. Now this list, most of the lists were actually put together by Pennsylvania Department of Resources or Penn State themselves, those are the things I'll be handing out. But this list I thought was just really wonderful. This was by one of my classmates in the Master Gardener program. She is a horticulturalist and is the data plant researcher at the Scott Arboretum down in Swarthmore. And I thought she did a good job of listing some really great trees. So I added her little list in here. What this is showing us, so what this list is showing us, some really great options if you're going to be replacing some trees in your yard or some shrubs, because it lists some of the attributes of plants that are usable by insects, butterflies, caterpillars, hummingbirds, and you know, just have really good usable value to our native wildlife. Like the first one is mentioned here, red buckeye. The flowers are, unfortunately I couldn't print it all in color, but the flowers of the red buckeye is red, duh. And it's really welcomed by the hummingbirds, and it's a small tree, so that would be really fabulous to have in the yard. They have listed about 4 or 5 different river birches. River birches would be a great selection instead of maybe a willow type plant. A willow is not bad but it can crack, fall over, and isn't as long-lived and doesn't host as many plants and wildlife, or doesn't host as many insect, bugs, birds as other things, as a choice like a river birch. She has listings of several types of river birches, and there's some pictures you can see. Great bark, like the exfoliating bark, the peely bark, really pretty, great fall colors. And she has annotated here that birches, river birches, support over 400 types of insects and butterfly species alone, which is just fabulous as opposed to, you know, like a Norway maple. Doesn't really host too much of anybody. Other trees and plants that are really cool are the small eastern redbud. You know, the redbud gets a great purple flower on the stem in the early spring, around Easter time, before the leaves come out. It really is quite good for birds, insects, and it's gorgeous. Its leaves are beautiful. Usually has great fall color. And it's just a great choice. It's a native, obviously. Everything I'm talking about here is native. A tree that I've seen now, and I really want to put on my property, I need to find a space where, on page 5, is something called the white fringe tree. It says that if you have, it's one of those that needs a male and a female. If you have the male and female adjacent to each other, it gets fabulous blue fruit in September that the birds just flock to. And it's a really cool, fluffy, lovely looking tree that, you know, I really was not aware of. I saw one up at the plant sale and someone bought it before I could get to it. I'm like, ah! So it's you know, it's something to look for if you have the type of location that you can put in that type of tree. There are native dogwoods that do not get the bad anthracnose disease. Anthracnose is the name of the disease that actually came from Europe that killed out off a majority of our dogwoods in the last 2 decades. So that's why they brought over so many Japanese dogwoods who seem to do okay, but it's not, they don't really support the wildlife, you know, like we've been talking here. So they have listed here about 5, page 6 and 7, have listed about 5 different types of dogwoods which are native and are basically pretty resistant to this anthracnose disease. And it's saying that they have, you know, great berries, which are a great source of for the migratory birds. They say who depend on the fat, 70% of the fat content from the berries are great for migratory birds. So it's really a great thing. I put in one of these with variegated leaves, and it is just beautiful. So it's just a great thing to consider. And another neat plant, which I've seen more often nowadays on page 8, the Franklinia tree. The Franklin tree just has a cool story that they thought even by the early 1700s, they knew this tree existed in America, and they thought it was totally extinct already by then, by chopping down and whatnot. But John Bartram, who is a famous botanist back in Ben Franklin's day, found this Franklinia tree down in the wilds of Georgia, propagated it, and now all Franklin trees, and there's some in Longwood Gardens, I've seen them around in different gardens, were all propagated from that the very same tree that the botanist found down in Georgia and saved from total extinction. And he named it after his best bud, Ben Franklin. So that's why it's called, he could have named it after himself, but he didn't. Cool man, cool man. So it's just, you know, another beautiful native tree. There are a couple magnolias which have wonderful flower, wonderful scent that are native and will flourish in this area. Black gum, sweet gum, native, have great attributes. The black gum says that the bees harvest the nectar and birds eat the fruit of it, and so it's very, you know, a neat choice. Sassafras tree. That was one of my favorite trees as a youth, as a little kid, because you know, it has the leaf, the three kinds of leaf, you know, like the mid, the left and the right. I always thought it was so fantastic that a tree would have three kinds of leaves on one tree. But they say, I didn't know, they said it was larval food for swallowtail butterflies. Who knew? Just really cool. You know, now I don't have a sassafras, I feel the need to go out and put one in. And white pines, of course, are native to Pennsylvania, to this region. So, and the bottom there gives a couple different types of white pines that are native and good, and bald cypress. And said bald cypress tolerates clay soil, which is what we are famous for here in Montgomery County, and helps with air pollution. So, hey, you can't beat that. That's good stuff. Next little sheet I have, now you might already have this just as bird oaks. This is not specifically native plants, but this is just repeating what birds, which birds like which seed and berry. And so it's just a nice summary. If you are trying to get one type of bird or another into your property, it's best to have trees and at least your seed station set up to help encourage that type of bird, you know, woodpecker, indigo bunting, or whatever. So it's just a cool little informational sheet. The last few wonderful bits of, I'll hand them all out at once so I'm not walking around all over the place. The last few pamphlets I'm going to be giving everyone are wonderful publications that are at the Extension office. All right, let's pick these all at once. Do this. There is one on hummingbirds. One on bluebirds, and okay. This one's on bluebirds, which is really interesting, and I think Robin had mentioned you were making birdhouses and whatnot. The next one is on hummingbirds. As we said, the hummingbirds basically are going for plants of tubular nature that, you know, have like a tube that they can stick their, that they can stick their long bill down. I'm going to be handing out, I'll go slightly here, handing out one that is just a great resource on wildlife. It gives websites, information, books, and resources, internet resources. And this one isn't native plants per se, but I didn't know of it. There is house finch eye infection. And it's just information, bottom line, clean your bird feeders. But but I thought it was just really interesting, and I thought since we were talking about keeping wildlife happy, healthy, and whatnot, I thought it was just really interesting to add that as a sidelight because I was unaware. So it gives that basic information on the conjunctivitis, but it's infections. Let's see. This little pamphlet I'm giving out is on wildlife habitat relationship. Now what that means is it sort of gives the info, the step-by-step on when we disturb the earth and change by making a road, eliminating the hedgerows, disturbing the earth and making what was once a wonderful forest into just a mud hole, or whatever you want to say. Then the succession of how land, animals, birds take the property basically back over. So it's sort of the succession of how the earth basically repairs itself, and what animals in succession come back over time. So that's just sort of interesting that you think about how the earth and the land eventually repairs itself after we've messed it up. Okay. Now I just want to go back to bluebirds for a moment. I handed that out now. Back to my position here. Just remembering that bluebirds, basically 68% of bluebird food is grasshoppers, crickets, beetles, and caterpillars. And it's really just in the winter then that they are more apt to be eating the fruit of our trees. So once again, going back to having trees that are native, like black cherry, serviceberry, sumac, dogwood, grape, our native honeysuckle, to feed the birds through the rest of the year to supplement, what we do in our feeders and whatnot. But 68% of the time they are eating insects. So we really don't want to kill off our insects by too much insecticide. Hummingbirds, as I mentioned a couple times, is basically eating by color. And inside the brochure of the hummingbirds then is another nice list of things, of plants that hummingbirds like. Now this list is not exclusively native. It's things that Penn State, whatever, has found that hummingbirds like to eat. So it might not always jive with what is native, because they are going for red flowers that give nice nectar. So, they are, so that's why you would see, that it doesn't jive with every single thing there, but hummingbirds are not worried about whether it's native or not. They're looking for a long tube that has sweet nectar. So that, just a good thing to consider in your gardens. So that's a lot of good pamphlet, good information for you to look at. Any questions? As I've been battling along for way long here.
You had mentioned as far as the trees, that we need a male and female for the fringe tree.
Yes.
Do we also need a male and female for the eastern redbud? Or is that a single tree
that doesn't need, that pollinates itself. A lot of things do pollinate themselves.
Okay.
But some things like hollies, some fruit trees, you need the male and the female in pretty close proximity for it all to work. Because that whole thing in biology of the perfect and imperfect flower, and that
right.
Some do it all themselves. They're very, very utilitarian, but not them. Yeah.
And most of that information we could find, if the nurseries don't know this, most of that we could find on the internet.
Good nurseries do. Okay, let me, or smaller nurseries basically do. Okay, like anyone go to Beamerwald? Okay. Beamerwald, great little nursery. It's off of Gorgeous Road. Go back this little road that you think it's a one-way little street. You know, you pray no one's going to be coming the other direction because there's no real good way to. There are little tiny pullovers, but it's really tiny. And they have a nice website. I'm on their email list. It's beamerwald.com. Lovely people. They know their stuff. They sell nice plants. They sell natives. It's not exclusive, but they sell natives. They're knowledgeable, great stuff, great people. If you want to go for a drive, like Bowman Hill Wildlife Preserve or Wildflower Preserve over New Hope, great drive, huge property. They give all kinds of plant lectures and hikes and stuff. They had a good plant sale not too long ago over there. It's all native plants. And they're just really knowledgeable, really neat. They have a nice website also. It's just BHWP. It's Bowman Hill Wildlife Preserve.org. And so they have wonderful, actually I didn't want to already give you too much stuff. Isn't quite ecological to have so many handouts, but since I wasn't sure of the setup, since I didn't go PowerPoint today, I didn't want to do a million more pages. But Bowman Hill has great things online. They have great resources for, like we're talking, native plants for dry soil, native plants for shady, native plants for wet soils. So they're a great resource, Bowman Hill, and they are exclusively native. Yellow Spring Farms, if you go out 113 towards Phoenixville, they are, they are a wholesaler, but they have weekends where they open up. They don't have you walk in because it's an active goat farm. They have a CSA on goat cheese, and it's a great little, beautiful little farm. So they have open weekends, but it's all exclusively native plant, extremely knowledgeable. They know anything and everything. So that's a great resource, 113. It's a pretty drive down, I think it's Yellow Springs Road. But their website is yellowspringsfarm.com, and nice little website. So there are, like I said, Lowe's, and the other box store there, Home Depot won't know, but most any other nursery that's smaller and is going to know. They are going to know. You won't have to do totally all your own work on the internet or. So it's just the box stores that you need to know a little bit what you're looking for. But hey, prices are good, and if you need to buy a few, and I've gotten some good things there. But great question. But there's some of the ones that are really more specifically native plants and great resources, and there are probably a lot of others. There are some down, I know Glenside is out of our way. I had heard that Primex Garden Center in Glenside was really wonderful. I have not been there. There's something in Patterson, in Jackson, New Jersey, Rare Plant Nursery, that apparently has wonderful things. There's something called Redbud Native Plant Nursery in Glen Mills. I don't just happen to drive that way, but there are really great things.
A lot of people have spoken about our American natives up in Trumbowersville.
Okay, and I don't know that one, but
they supply natives for like different native plant sales and things like that. I haven't been there myself yet, but I
So there's a lot more out there.
Yes.
Very good. So that's just great stuff. So then I have a question for you. Anyone want to plant? I was going to ask questions and stuff, but everyone can have a plant. The ostrich ferns really like some shade. They're not real fussy, but if they're in the burning sunlight, they won't be happy. They like moist toes, basically. But they are totally happy. They're really versatile. They come up early in the spring. They will die in the fall. As you see, they get like 3 feet tall. They're really cool. They're wonderful to be planted in the back of your bed, and they will, you know, they will spread. They're not invasive, but they will spread. They are happy plants. They spread under the ground by rhizome. So you have your plant here, and they say, oh, there's another one. And the one booklet said that if you think you're getting too many in the spring, then make fiddlehead salad out of it. Apparently, I've never eaten any, but the fiddleheads that come up, you know, really cool. Apparently, it's wonderful, nutritious veg. I've never done it, but the book said, you know, or you can just, you know, it goes out into the yard, just run it with a lawnmower. So these are happy in shade with some moisture. Last year when it got so darn hot and dry, what was that, in July? All these were up 3 feet high and just happy as a clam. And then we had that hot, dry, and they just all died down to nothing, just nothing. And then in September we had all that rain, they all came back up again. And they were just all 3 feet high again until the frost took it down again. So it's, you know, they're very happy, adorable plants. So I'm, you know, give them to anyone who would like another type of tall, showy, durable fern. And sun can be from moist to dry is the Rudbeckia hirta, or black-eyed Susan. So it is also very durable. It self-seeds. We have these all, and coming down, I have a long driveway, like a 200 feet long driveway. And I have these buggers all in the back against the fence, and all these guys in the front, and they are just happy as a clam. So these will, you know, obviously they're not in bloom yet, but we have one or two that just started. They were just really jumping the gun on themselves. So these like a little more sun, but actually have these guys together, and that's, you know, plants don't always know that they shouldn't do as well as they do together. So I have these guys together, and it's not technically right, but they do so wonderfully together. But this technically likes more moist and shade, but it doesn't know that it can't do a little bit more sun. And this guy likes, says sun to part shade, and it can go moist to dry, so it can go either direction. So, you know, whoever wants plants, I was going to ask you quizzes, but it's about the right number of people here for the number of plants, because I think I brought 12, you know, 6 of each, 6 of, you know, and they're from my yard, so they are totally native. They are native, and they are totally acclimated to our type of soil here. So in conclusion, I'll just say native plants obviously are plants that were here prior to European contact. They are important for our wildlife, for our birds, our pollinators, our bees. We can easily grow great gardens that are functional and gorgeous, and it's just the best choice for our wildlife and birds that we love.
Thank you, BJ.
Thank you.
So, if anyone wants a plant, Rudbeckia, ostrich ferns. The ostrich ferns are happy if they're sort of, you can put them in a pot too. If you don't have specific, you can put this in a container. When they say with containers, you want your thriller, your filler, you know, your midsection, and your spiller. So you could do this slightly in the back of a container with impatiens or begonias and you know, like sweet potatoes tumbling over, and that look really cool because, you know, if it's real windy, obviously you can see that it breaks some, but it's going to throw up more fronds. So you know, either plant is really adorable and can take a joke, as I say. And I like plants that can take a joke. So that's it. Take a joke.